The HOA towed my disabled wife's truck. They said she wasn't part of their little club. They laughed while dragging her car down that dusty road. But what they didn't know is that my wife used to train K-9 units for the county police. And when she brought her old partner back home, the HOA's little power game turned into something else entirely. Before I tell you what happened next, just remember, some people pick the wrong family to mess with. Hey folks, welcome back to HOA Stories. My name's Jake, and I live out in a quiet corner of Texas suburbia. You know, one of those places where every lawn looks perfect, and every neighbor pretends to smile while secretly watching you from behind their blinds. I'm a mechanic by trade. And my wife, Sarah, she's a fighter, even though she's been in a wheelchair ever since a highway crash 5 years ago. If you really hate HOAs, or you've ever had one try to control your life, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a BOOHOA in the comments. Let's see how many of us are done taking orders from these suburban tyrants. Now, let me tell you how one petty HOA decision almost broke us. And how Sarah broke them instead. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. Sun shining over the cul-de-sac, birds on the fence. The kind of day that fools you into thinking everything's normal. Sarah was sipping her coffee by the porch, watching the dogs run around. Her old pickup truck sat by the mailbox, the same truck she used to train with the K-9 division before the accident. That truck meant something to her. Not just metal and wheels, it was her memory, her pride. Then I heard it. The growl of an engine that didn't belong to anyone on our street. A white tow truck rolled up, big red letters painted on the back, HOA. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, and behind him came Nancy, the HOA president. You know the type, hair perfect, smile sharp enough to cut glass. Jake, we've sent 3 notices, she said, pretending to sound sweet. Your wife's vehicle violates Section 8, Paragraph C. Non-member vehicles aren't allowed on HOA roads. I blinked. Non-member vehicles? Nancy, this is our property, you don't own the road. She smirked. Actually, the board voted to extend jurisdiction last month, didn't you read your letter? Sarah rolled her wheelchair closer. Her voice calm, but her eyes cold as a storm. You're towing my truck because I didn't join your little club? Nancy didn't even look at her. Rules are rules, sweetie. The tow driver hooked the chain. And that sound, that clink, felt like someone snapping her dignity in half. Sarah's hand gripped the armrest. Her jaw tightened. But she didn't shout, she smiled. That was the first warning sign. I'd seen that smile before. Back when she trained K-9s that could take down armed suspects in under 6 seconds. She just looked at me and whispered, "Let them tow it." Nancy gave a little laugh, waved at her husband standing by the road, and said, "Next time, maybe follow the rules like everyone else." The truck disappeared in a cloud of dust down the dirt road. Sarah wheeled herself back inside without a word. The dogs followed, silent. That night, I found her in the garage. The old K-9 crate open, the tags cleaned, the leash hung neatly on the wall. "Sarah, what are you doing?" I asked. She looked up, that same storm in her eyes. "They wanted to play power games," she said softly. "Let's give them a real one." The next morning, she called someone I hadn't heard from in years, Officer Mason, her old partner from the K-9 unit. They talked for nearly an hour, half whisper, half laughter. When she hung up, she looked lighter, like she was waiting for something. "Mason's coming by," she said, "with Rex." Rex, that dog was a legend. A retired German shepherd, trained for crowd control and scent tracking. The HOA had no idea what was about to roll into their perfect little neighborhood. By noon, a black SUV pulled up. Mason stepped out, uniform sharp, dog sitting tall beside him. Sarah greeted him like old times, hand out, firm shake. "You ready, partner?" She smiled at Rex. The dog wagged his tail like he remembered everything. We walked down to the HOA office, a fancy shed with fake marble tiles and a bulletin board full of threats. Nancy was inside, sipping her diet soda like she owned the town. When Rex barked once, loud and sharp, she almost spilled it. "What is that thing doing here?" she snapped. Sarah rolled forward. "This thing used to patrol streets safer than this one. And you illegally towed a vehicle from private land, that's theft under Texas code." Nancy tried to laugh it off. "You can't scare me with a dog." Before she finished, Mason walked in. Badge gleaming, tone calm but firm. "Actually, ma'am, we already checked the property lines. The tow was unauthorized. You might want to call your lawyer." Nancy's fake confidence cracked. She looked from the badge, to the dog, to Sarah's smile. Sarah leaned forward. "You told me to follow the rules, Nancy. I just did. I swear, you could hear the silence from 3 houses down. That was the first time the HOA realized they weren't dealing with another quiet suburban couple. They were dealing with someone who knew every code, every right, and every way to use their own system against them. That night, Sarah sat by the window again, smiling at the stars. You know what's funny, Jake, she said. People like Nancy think control makes them powerful, but real power is knowing when to smile. I laughed, but something in her tone told me she wasn't done yet. And she wasn't. Because 2 days later, she got a letter from the HOA demanding an apology or face community penalties. She didn't get angry this time. She just looked at me and said, "Time to bring Rex for a little walk." And that's when things really started to go wrong for the HOA. What do you think Sarah is planning to do with Rex now that the HOA crossed the line? Drop your theory below. I'll pin the smartest one backhand index pointing down. Sarah said it like a whisper, but I swear the air in the room changed when she did. Time to bring Rex for a little walk. Now, when my wife says walk, she doesn't mean it like most people do. She means strategy. She means revenge. That morning the sky looked soft, gray clouds sitting low over the cul-de-sac. The HOA sign out front read Community Cleanup Day in cheerful blue letters. But underneath, taped in red, was a small printed rule sheet. Non-compliant homes will face penalties. That was Sarah's favorite kind of warning, the kind that meant nothing, until it did. She rolled out the front gate, Rex walking right beside her, leash loose. The dog didn't bark. Didn't growl. He just moved like a soldier on mission. Every step in sync with her wheels. I followed behind, coffee in hand, pretending to be casual. But my heart was racing. Because I knew. Sarah wasn't just going for a walk. Nancy and the other HOA members were gathered at the park entrance. Clipboards, fake smiles, matching blue vests, like they were running a parade for paperwork. The moment they saw Sarah, the whispering started. You could hear it from across the field. That's her. The one who brought the cop dog. She's not even part of the HOA. Nancy stepped forward. Arms folded, lips tight. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "you're trespassing again. This area is for HOA members only." Sarah smiled. "Funny. I thought public property was open to the public." Nancy lifted her chin. "We manage it for the neighborhood. That means rules apply." Sarah looked down at Rex. "You hear that, boy? They think they own the grass now." The dog tilted his head like he was judging her. And then Sarah did something that caught everyone off guard. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a stack of printed papers, and dropped them into Nancy's hands. "Here," she said, "since you love paperwork so much." Nancy frowned, flipping through. "What is this?" Sarah leaned in. "A certified notice from the County Code Enforcement Office. Turns out your HOA bylaws were never legally filed." The look on Nancy's face could have powered a whole street lamp. The other members went silent. Even the tow truck driver, the same guy who dragged her truck away, looked like he wanted to vanish. "You can't be serious," Nancy whispered. Sarah shrugged. "Serious enough that your fines, your letters, even your towing authority, are all illegal." Nancy's smile cracked. She tried to stand taller, but her voice wavered. You think you can threaten me?" Sarah looked calm. "No. I don't threaten, Nancy. I just train response behavior." She gave a small hand signal. And Rex barked, once, loud and deep. The sound echoed down the street, bouncing off the perfect white fences. You could see half the neighborhood curtains twitch open. Nancy jumped back, clutching her clipboard like a shield. The other members whispered again. Sarah didn't move, just sat there smiling like she owned the moment. We walked away after that. No shouting. No drama. Just silence. But that silence, it didn't last. By evening, the HOA Facebook page was flooded. Posts from neighbors. "Did you know the HOA might be illegal? Why was that woman with the dog at the park? Who's in charge here?" The board was cracking from the inside, and Sarah didn't even have to lift a finger. She sat by the window that night, watching the tow truck drive past our house slow. Almost like he was afraid to stop. "Jake," she said softly, "bullies always think they own control until you make them chase it." She reached down and scratched Rex behind the ear. He wagged his tail like he knew exactly what she meant. 2 days later, another letter came. This time it wasn't an HOA notice. It was a personal one, hand-delivered, folded neatly, and smelling like Nancy's perfume. Sarah opened it while sipping her morning coffee. She read it once. Then twice. Then started laughing so hard she almost spilled her drink. "They invited me to a hearing," she said. They want to discuss my behavior and my animal companion. I nearly choked. They're calling a meeting about you and a retired police dog? She nodded, eyes glinting. Oh, I'm going. That night, she prepared like she was going to war. Clean shirt, hair tied, dog brushed and alert. She looked unstoppable. When we rolled into the community hall, every seat was filled. HOA members lined up like soldiers. Nancy sat in the center, the self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac. There was even a small sign taped on the podium. Order and respect above all. Sarah smiled at it. They're about to learn what respect really means. The meeting began. Nancy cleared her throat and started reading from a paper that sounded more like a rant. This homeowner has repeatedly violated HOA boundaries, disrupted public spaces, and used an aggressive animal to intimidate board members. Sarah raised her hand. Aggressive, she said softly. Would you call a retired service animal aggressive for barking once? Nancy ignored her. Furthermore, the presence of law enforcement connections has created an unsafe environment for our volunteers. Sarah cut her off. Unsafe? You mean the same volunteers who trespassed on private land to tow my truck? The room fell silent. You could hear Rex breathing, calm and steady, beside her wheelchair. You see, Nancy, she said, I used to work with dogs who could smell lies from 50 feet away. Rex just told me he doesn't like your tone. The crowd broke into laughter. Even a few HOA members tried to hide their grins. Nancy's face turned bright red. She slammed the gavel. That's enough. This meeting is adjourned. But she didn't get to finish. Because Mason, the officer, stepped inside just then. Badge out. Expression serious. Afternoon, folks, he said, we received a complaint about unauthorized towing on private property. Thought I'd check in. Nancy froze. Sarah leaned back, cool as ever. Oh look, she whispered, back up. Mason handed Nancy a small envelope. County notice. You'll want to read that. It includes fines for operating an unregistered HOA authority. The entire board went dead silent. Nancy's hand shook as she opened it. Her eyes moved across the page. Her voice cracked when she spoke. You can't do this to me. Sarah leaned forward. You did it to yourself. Then she rolled out. Rex by her side. Head high. Calm. Victorious. That night, the neighborhood was quieter than ever. No more patrol cars. No more letters taped to mailboxes. Even the HOA sign had been taken down. Sarah sat on the porch again. The same spot where all of this had started. She looked at me, half smiling. You know, Jake, she said, power isn't about control, it's about how long you can pretend you have it. I nodded. But deep down, I knew something she didn't say out loud. Nancy wasn't done. She was too proud. And when pride mixes with humiliation, bad things start to brew. The next morning, we woke up to something we hadn't seen in months. A new sign. Fresh paint. Right across the road from our mailbox. New HOA election, rebuilding our community. Sarah stared at it for a long second. Then smiled that quiet, dangerous smile again. Round 2? I asked. She looked at Rex. Round 2. If you were in Sarah's place, would you let it go now that the HOA is falling apart, or would you make sure Nancy learns her lesson for good? Drop your take below, backhand index pointing down. The sign looked almost innocent at first. Fresh paint, crisp white letters. New HOA election, rebuilding our community. But to me and Sarah, it felt like a warning. She stared at it from her wheelchair, coffee steaming in her hand. The morning light hit her face just right, calm, but sharp. That kind of calm that means trouble's brewing behind the smile. She's not quitting, Sarah said quietly. She's regrouping. Nancy wasn't the type to admit defeat. She was the type who'd rather burn the neighborhood than lose control of it. And if there's one thing Sarah can't stand, it's someone who thinks power comes from a clipboard. That week, flyers started appearing in mailboxes. Vote for Nancy, restore order and pride to our neighborhood. Each one had her perfect smile printed across the top, like she was running for president of the picket fences. Sarah got one too. But instead of throwing it away, she pinned it on our fridge. Reminders are good, she said. Keeps the game fun. A few nights later, the HOA held their public forum, an open mic meeting for all residents to discuss the election. It was supposed to be peaceful. But nothing involving Nancy ever is. The community hall was full, folding chairs lined up, cheap cookies on a table, fake smiles everywhere. Nancy stood up front with a microphone and a binder full of lies. We've had disorder lately, she said, outsiders challenging our structure. But this election is about unity. Translation, I want my throne back. People clapped, some because they meant it, others because they were scared of her. Then Sarah raised her hand. The room turned quiet like someone hit pause. Question, she said calmly. If your HOA isn't legally recognized, how exactly are you holding an election? You could have heard a pin drop. Nancy's smile twitched. We're in the process of reinstating. Sarah interrupted. Reinstating something that never existed? Gasps. A few muffled laughs. Nancy's face went red, but she held onto her microphone like it was her lifeline. Mrs. Carter, this meeting is for members only. Sarah wheeled forward. You towed my truck. You called a hearing about my dog. You made me part of your business the day you broke my gate. The crowd shifted, people whispering. Even the ones who'd clapped earlier started leaning our way. Then Rex barked once, deep, commanding, like thunder rolling through the hall. Every head turned. He agrees, Sarah said with a grin. Nancy slammed her binder shut. Security. But there was no security. There never had been. Just Nancy, and the walls she'd built out of fake authority. Sarah turned to the crowd. Neighbors, what do you really want? Rules and threats, or peace and freedom? The applause started slow. Then louder. Then it didn't stop. Nancy walked off the stage. Her face pale. Her crown gone. That night, our porch lights glowed brighter. People who'd never spoken to us before stopped by. Old man Peterson brought cookies. Mrs. James from across the road said, about time someone stood up to that woman. Sarah thanked them all, smiled, and kept saying the same thing. This isn't over yet. Because she knew Nancy. Pride like hers doesn't fade quietly. It snaps. And when it snaps, it bites. A few days later, weird things started happening. Our mailbox got knocked over twice. Then someone left a note on our porch. No name. Just one sentence written in all caps. HOA doesn't forget. Sarah didn't even flinch. She picked it up, pinned it to the fridge right next to Nancy's flyer, and said, We're collecting souvenirs now. But I wasn't as calm as her. Because that night, I saw a car parked at the end of our street, lights off, engine running. Didn't move for half an hour. When I mentioned it, she smiled again, that same dangerous smile. Good. Let them watch. Then she picked up her phone and called Mason. 2 days later, Mason showed up again. Uniform crisp, same badge, same calm energy. He stood by our porch and said, You were right. Someone's been digging through property reports. Nancy's trying to refile the HOA illegally. Sarah nodded slowly. So she's doubling down. He smirked. You want me to handle it? Sarah shook her head. No. I'll handle it my way. The next weekend, the HOA held the official election. Tables set up, ballots ready, Nancy front and center with a fake smile painted back on her face. Everyone in the neighborhood showed up, mostly out of curiosity. Even Mason came, off duty this time, standing near the back like a silent witness. Sarah rolled up late, on purpose. Rex walked beside her, leash loose, head high. The crowd parted like the sea. You came, Nancy said, forced grin barely hiding her rage. Wouldn't miss it, Sarah replied. Nancy started her speech, talking about unity, tradition, respect, all those empty words that sound nice until you realize they mean control. Then, right as people started voting, Sarah spoke up again. Before anyone casts a ballot, she said loudly, I think it's fair you all see this. She pulled out a small folder, printed copies of county records. Proof of illegal re-registration attempts. Nancy's signature, right there in ink. Gasps filled the room again. Nancy's eyes went wide. You stole those. Public records, Sarah said smoothly. Anyone can request them. Even a woman in a wheelchair. Someone in the back laughed. Then another. Then half the room was laughing. Nancy tried to yell over them. This is a smear campaign. She's not even part of the HOA. Sarah leaned forward. Exactly. And that's why I'm the only one who can see clearly. The voting stopped. The papers crumpled. People walked out. Nancy stood there alone at her folding table, surrounded by silence and embarrassment. Later that night, I found Sarah sitting outside again, Rex resting his head on her lap. The porch light flickered, soft, calm, peaceful. You think it's over? I asked. She smiled faintly. Over? Not yet. She'll come for me next. They always do when they run out of lies. I sighed. You could have just let her fade away, Sarah. She looked at me, eyes cold, but full of something deeper. And let her build another empire over someone else's fence. No, Jake, people like Nancy need to be taught in public. Otherwise they never learn. Sure enough, a week later, it happened. Nancy filed a complaint against Sarah for harassment and intimidation. Claimed she used a dog to influence an election. The irony was almost funny. Sarah didn't even blink when she got the notice. She just clipped it next to the other papers on the fridge and said, "Perfect. Now we take it to court." She called Mason again. He laughed so hard I could hear it through the phone. "You know she's walking into her own trap, right?" he said. "Exactly," Sarah replied. The night before the hearing, Sarah and I sat by the porch. The wind was quiet. Rex slept beside her. And the moonlight painted everything gold. "Jake," she said softly, "if I lose, promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't get angry. Just smile. That's what scares them the most." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because somewhere deep down, I realized she wasn't doing this just for revenge. She was doing it for every person the HOA ever bullied into silence. The next morning, as we drove to the courthouse, Sarah turned to me and said, "You ever wonder what makes people like Nancy tick? Control?" I guessed. She shook her head. "Fear. They hide it behind paperwork, but it's always fear." She looked out the window, smile soft. "Let's show her what real control looks like." And that's how we walked into the courtroom, calm, confident, with Rex by her side. Nancy was already there, papers spread out like a shield. But what she didn't know was that Sarah had something no rulebook could beat. The truth. If you were sitting in that courtroom and had the chance to speak, whose side would you defend and what would you say to Nancy? Drop your thoughts below, backhand index pointing down. The courthouse smelled like old paper and bad decisions. Marble floors, long echoes, a line of people who all looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. And in the middle of it all sat Nancy. Perfectly ironed blouse, pearls that probably weren't real, and that fake politician smile glued to her face. She waved at us like we were old friends. Sarah didn't wave back. Rex just stared at her, calm, unblinking. And I swear, for a second, Nancy looked away first. We took our seats in the front row. Mason sat behind us, off duty again, wearing that little half-grin of his, the kind that says, "I already know how this ends." Sarah opened her folder, nothing but 3 papers inside. I peeked over her shoulder. "Just 3?" I whispered. She smirked. It only takes 1 bullet to end a war. When the judge walked in, everyone stood. Old guy, glasses, voice like gravel. Didn't look like the type you could charm with cookies or sympathy. Nancy went first. Her lawyer, tall, nervous, and clearly overpaid, started listing all the infractions. "Your Honor, Mrs. Carter used intimidation, verbal harassment, and a large dog to influence a public election within her community." The judge raised an eyebrow. "A dog?" "Yes, sir. The animal was used to sway voters through fear." Mason almost laughed out loud behind us. Sarah leaned forward slightly, whispering, "Fear works both ways." Then it was Sarah's turn. She rolled forward, calm and deliberate, every click of her wheelchair echoing like a drumbeat. "Your Honor," she began, "I'm not a lawyer. I'm a mechanic's sister. But I do know when someone's lying." The courtroom went still. Even Nancy's lawyer stopped fidgeting. Sarah lifted one of the 3 papers. "This," she said, "is the county record showing that the HOA Nancy represents has been inactive since 2018. No renewal. No filings. No authority." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Inactive?" Sarah nodded. "Which means this so-called election she held was nothing more than a neighborhood potluck with paperwork." A few people chuckled. Nancy's jaw clenched. Sarah lifted the second paper. "This is the towing report from my driveway. Filed under an HOA code that legally doesn't exist. That's fraud." The judge turned to Nancy. "Is that true?" Nancy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her lawyer shuffled through his notes like he was searching for an escape hatch. I'll have to verify that, Your Honor." Sarah smiled. "Take your time. We've been verifying her lies for weeks." The third paper, she held it up like a playing card. "And this, Your Honor, is a written statement from a police officer confirming Nancy attempted to refile the HOA charter under false pretenses." That's not just fraud. That's impersonation of authority. Mason nodded slightly from the back. The judge turned toward Nancy again, voice stern now. Do you understand the seriousness of this, ma'am? Nancy's cheeks flushed red. Your Honor, she's twisting the facts. She has a personal vendetta. Sarah didn't blink. You chained my gate shut. You called the police on me for unauthorized gardening. This isn't a vendetta, Nancy. This is self-defense. The judge almost smiled. Well said. Nancy's voice cracked. You can't just, she doesn't even belong to the HOA. Exactly, Sarah said. And that's why you can't control me. The room went quiet again. That kind of silence that only happens when everyone knows the fight's already over. But then Nancy did something no one expected. She turned to the judge, tears in her eyes, voice trembling like she was suddenly the victim. Your Honor, I was only trying to protect the neighborhood. People like her, they don't understand rules. Sarah tilted her head, eyes cold. People like me? I mean, disabled outsiders. The whole courtroom gasped. Mason stood up halfway, ready to step in, but Sarah raised a hand. No, let her finish, Sarah said softly. Go ahead, Nancy. Tell the court what kind of people deserve to live in your perfect neighborhood. Nancy froze. The words caught in her throat. The judge slammed his gavel. That's enough. Mrs. Nancy, you're dangerously close to contempt. Nancy sat down hard, staring at the floor. The judge looked at Sarah. Mrs. Carter, you've made your case very clearly. The court finds no grounds for any complaint against you. In fact, I'd advise your neighborhood to reconsider who's running things. He paused. As for the unauthorized HOA activity, that's going to the county for review. Nancy's face turned ghost white. Sarah nodded once. No smile. No gloat. Just quiet victory. After the hearing, we stepped out into the sunlight. Reporters were there, local news sniffing around after someone tipped them off. Sarah spoke to one of them. Calm, short sentences. No drama. Just truth. All we wanted, she said, was to live without fear. The reporter asked, do you think the HOA will dissolve now? Sarah looked back toward the courthouse doors. It'll collapse on its own. They always do when the lies run out. That evening, back home, Sarah sat on the porch again. The air smelled like rain. Rex lay across her feet, tail twitching slowly. I handed her a cup of coffee and said, you really buried her in there. She chuckled softly. No. I just showed her what she buried herself under. Then she stared off toward Nancy's house. Lights off. Curtains drawn. Silence. She's not done, Sarah murmured. People like that don't vanish. They plot. I frowned. What's left for her to do? Sarah's eyes darkened. Desperate people do desperate things. 2 days later, our gate was wide open. Rex's leash was cut. And Sarah's wheelchair had muddy tracks leading toward the street. She wasn't home. My heart dropped. I ran up and down the block yelling her name. Neighbors came out, worried, confused. Then I saw the note, taped to the side of her truck. Same handwriting as before. Big, blocky letters. If you want her back, stop digging. I froze. The wind picked up. Rex barked once, deep and low. Mason's car screeched to a stop a minute later. He took one look at the note and muttered. She's gone too far this time. We traced the muddy tracks for a mile before they disappeared near the woods. The police got involved, drones were sent up, and the whole town was buzzing. And then, one of the officers found something at the edge of the creek, Sarah's necklace. The one she never took off. Mason clenched his fists. Nancy's house. Now. We stormed over there, 3 patrol cars, flashing lights slicing through the night. The place looked abandoned. No lights, no sound, no movement. But inside. The living room was covered in boxes, papers, and HOA files scattered across the floor. And in the center, on a small table, was a binder. Labeled, Contingency Plan. Inside were pictures, of Sarah, of me, even of Mason. Surveillance shots. Notes. Schedules. Mason swore under his breath. She's been watching all of you. Then his radio crackled. Another unit had found tire tracks behind Nancy's property, leading toward the lake. We ran. The moon reflected off the water like broken glass. And there, half submerged near the dock, was Nancy's car. The driver's door open. No one inside. But something floated near the surface, a handbag. Sarah's handbag. For a second, the world stopped. No wind. No sound. Just that sick feeling crawling up my spine. Then Rex barked again, sharp, urgent, and ran toward the tree line, nose to the ground. Mason followed. And that's when we heard it, faint, but real. A voice calling for help. We pushed through the brush, branches snapping, mud slipping under our shoes. And there she was, Sarah, tied to a fence post near the lake, drenched, cold, but alive. When she saw us, she smirked through her shaking lips. Told you she'd come for me. Mason cut the ropes, helped her up. I held her hand tight. She's gone, Sarah. We'll find her. She coughed, voice hoarse but steady. No need. Why? She looked at the car sinking slowly into the water. Because she's not coming out. We stood there in silence as the taillights faded beneath the surface. The water rippled once, then went still. Sarah whispered. That's what fear does, Jake. It drowns itself. Do you think Nancy's death was an accident, or did Sarah know exactly how this would end from the start? Eyes. Comment your theory below. It's been 3 weeks since the lake swallowed Nancy whole. 3 weeks since the police closed the case, called it an unfortunate accident. 3 weeks since Sarah stopped smiling. She still sits by the porch every evening, same coffee, same silence. But now, she doesn't look at the street anymore. She looks past it. Like she's waiting for something that shouldn't exist. Mason came by yesterday with the final report. No foul play. No evidence of anyone else at the scene. Just Nancy's car at the bottom of the lake and an empty passenger seat. He set the file on our kitchen counter and said quietly, "It's over, Jake." But it didn't feel over. Not even close. Because that night, someone knocked on our door. It was soft, 2 knocks, then silence. I opened it, nothing there. Just the wind. But on the doormat was an envelope. Wet from the drizzle. No return address. Just our names typed on the front. To Sarah and Jake Carter. Sarah rolled closer, staring at it without touching it. "Don't open it," she said. "Why not?" "Because I already know who it's from." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I tore it open anyway. Inside, a single sheet of paper, printed. And at the top, the HOA logo. The same one Sarah proved in court didn't legally exist anymore. But now it was stamped, signed, and dated 1 week ago. And right below that, notice of reinstatement, HOA compliance required. My mouth went dry. "This has to be fake," I whispered. "The HOA's dead, Sarah. You killed it." Sarah stared at the paper. Then she smiled. A small, bitter smile. "That's the thing about monsters, Jake. You can drown them, but they float back up." Next morning, I checked the mailbox. Every house on the block had gotten the same envelope. Some were already ripped open. Some neighbors were talking in clusters, whispering, anxious. One guy shouted across the street, "Hey Jake, did they start the HOA again?" I shrugged. "No idea, man." But my stomach turned. Because I did have an idea. And it scared the hell out of me. Later that day, Mason stopped by again. I showed him the letter. He frowned, flipping it over and over. "That's the same format Nancy used," he muttered. "Same font. Same paper. So someone's copying her?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Or maybe she's not gone." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Don't start that. Her body was never recovered," Mason said. "That lake's deep, but not that deep." That night, we heard it again. The knock. 2 taps. Same rhythm. I opened the door fast this time. No one there. But another envelope on the step. This one had no HOA logo. Just 3 words, handwritten. "You didn't win." Sarah's voice trembled. It's her handwriting. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. "Sarah, she's dead." She shook her head slowly. "No. She's just changed tactics." The next morning, something even stranger. Our fence was open again. And on the inside of the gate, carved into the wood with something sharp, were the letters. HOA Lives. Mason came by with his flashlight, scanning every inch. No footprints. No tire marks. Whoever did this came on foot. Sarah sat silently, watching him. Then she said something that chilled both of us. "She's testing us." "What do you mean?" I asked. "It's like chess," Sarah said. "Every move has a purpose." She's seeing how scared we are. And if we're scared enough, then she wins. We started sleeping with lights on. Rex stayed by the door, alert all night. Every creak, every gust of wind made my heart jump. Sarah began writing things down, dates, times, details. Every strange sound, every odd thing that happened. She called it her HOA logbook. I thought she was losing it. Until one morning. We woke up to find a fine notice taped to our window. Printed. Signed. Official looking. Fine reason, failure to maintain decorative uniformity. Amount due, $500. And at the bottom, typed in bold. Signed, Acting President, N.M. Nancy. Nancy Martin. My hand started shaking. Sarah, this has to be a prank. A prank, she said quietly. Then why did the county clerk call me this morning? What? She handed me her phone. A voicemail. From the clerk's office. Mrs. Carter, your HOA has been reinstated as of last week. Your new president of record is Nancy Martin. If you have questions, please contact the office. My blood ran cold. But she's dead. I shouted. Sarah whispered. Maybe she filed it before the lake. But even she didn't sound convinced. That evening, Mason came back, pale as a ghost. You're not gonna believe this, he said. Someone logged into the HOA portal last night. From Nancy's old computer. Her laptop was recovered, right? I asked. He nodded. In her house. It's still in evidence. Then how? He looked at me. Unless someone else is using her credentials. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Or she's alive. That night, it rained hard. The kind of storm that makes the whole house hum. Around midnight, Rex started barking again, deep, angry, relentless. I ran outside, flashlight in hand. The yard was empty, except for one thing. A plastic container, floating in a puddle. Inside it, another note, sealed in a Ziploc bag. I opened it. The paper inside was soggy, but the words were clear. You thought drowning me would fix things. But you forgot. I am the HOA. Lightning flashed. And in that split second, I saw something. A figure across the street. Standing under the streetlight. A woman. Short hair. Soaked. Just watching. I blinked. And she was gone. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, staring into the rain. Whispering to herself, over and over. She wants control back. She wants order. She wants me. I tried to calm her down. But then she turned to me, eyes wide, voice low. Jake, if she's back, she won't stop until one of us is gone. The next morning, Mason showed up with grim news. The lake, it drained a few feet from last night's storm, he said. And we found something. What? He hesitated. A door. Metal. Buried under the mud near where the car was. Sarah's face went pale. A door to what? We don't know yet, Mason said. But whatever's down there, it's not just water. That evening, another letter came. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten again, shaky, uneven. Stop digging. HOA meetings resume Friday. Attendance is mandatory. No signature. Just one word at the bottom, underlined twice. Compliance. Sarah laughed, but it wasn't her normal laugh. It was sharp. Almost broken. Friday, huh, she said. Then let's give them a show. Do you think Nancy really survived, or is someone else pretending to be her to rebuild the HOA's power? Eyes. Drop your theory below. Friday came faster than I expected. Too fast. Sarah didn't sleep much that week. Neither did I. Every night we heard small sounds outside, shuffling near the gate, a tap on the siding, whispers that could have been the wind, or not. Rex stayed on guard like a soldier. No tail wagging. No calm. Just alert. And then Friday night arrived. The meeting was supposed to happen at the old HOA clubhouse, a place that hadn't been used in years. A small, one-story building near the woods. It used to host bake sales, community dinners, petty arguments about mailbox heights. Now, it just looked haunted. Sarah insisted on going. Mason tried to talk her out of it. You don't have to prove anything, he said. Let me handle it. Sarah looked up at him, cold and calm. You can't handle what you don't understand, Mason. She turned her wheelchair toward the door. This started with me. It ends with me. I followed her. Because that's what you do when the person you love walks straight into hell, you go with them. The path to the clubhouse was muddy from last night's rain. The streetlights flickered. Every shadow felt too long. Too alive. When we reached the entrance, the old wooden sign still hung crooked. Welcome homeowners. But someone had crossed out the word homeowners. Underneath, in black marker, it said, obey. Sarah didn't flinch. She just whispered. She's setting the stage. Inside, the air was heavy. Dust, mildew, and something metallic, like dried blood. Flickering candles lined the old tables. Chairs were set up in neat little rows, facing the front. And every chair had a piece of paper taped to it. An attendance sheet. Mine said, Jake Carter, member. Hers said, Sarah Carter, violator. I felt my stomach twist. This is sick, I muttered. Sarah picked up her paper and read the fine print. Then she froze. Jake, she whispered. This was printed on my office paper. From my printer. Before I could speak, the lights flickered and the door shut behind us. Hard. Locked. I tried to handle, nothing. Then, the projector at the front of the room turned on by itself. A bright beam cut through the dark. On the wall, a photo. Sarah. Tied to the fence post by the lake. Taken from a distance. My heart dropped. Then another image, Nancy, smiling in her HOA blazer, her face wet, hair dripping. Same outfit from the day she drowned. And then, a live feed. A camera view of us, right now, sitting in that room. Jake, Sarah whispered, we're being watched. I scanned the corners, and saw it. A small red light blinking in the vent. A camera. Then the speakers crackled. And a voice filled the room. Slow. Calm. Familiar. Welcome, neighbors. Sarah's breathing quickened. That's her. Nancy's voice echoed through the old PA system. I'm glad you finally decided to comply. Some of you have forgotten what community means. Rules. Respect. Order. Sarah clenched her fists. You're dead, Nancy. Stop hiding. Nancy laughed. Dead? No. I just evolved. The projector flickered again. This time, a new image appeared. A logo. Not just HOA. It said, HOA Council, Division of Neighborhood Integrity. Underneath. Revival phase, active. Mason's voice suddenly came through my phone, faint, breaking up. Jake. Are you there? Get out now. It's a setup. We're locked in. I shouted. Listen to me, we found something under the lake. A bunker. It's static. Then silence. Sarah looked at me. A bunker? I nodded slowly. She built this into something bigger. The lights dimmed again. Now only the candles burned. The projector screen went black. And then text appeared, white letters on a red background. Voting session, reinstatement of order. A robotic voice began reading from the speakers. All members must vote for or against compliance. Failure to participate will result in permanent suspension. What does that even mean? I said. Sarah's face turned pale. Jake, permanent suspension, that's what she said before the lake. The robotic voice continued. Voting begins in 10 seconds. A hidden panel on the table in front of us slid open, revealing 2 buttons. Green, comply. Red, reject. Sarah stared at hers, unblinking. If we press reject, she'll trigger something. Then don't press anything, I said. But the countdown started. 10. 9. 8. Sarah grabbed my arm. Trust me. She pressed reject. The candles went out. Everything went black. Only the projector's faint light remained. Then the voice whispered again, softer this time. Almost human. You disappoint me, Sarah. A flash of static on the wall. And Nancy's face appeared again. But this time, she wasn't on video. She was live. Hair wet. Eyes wide. Like she was staring through the screen at us. You thought you could erase me, she said. You can't erase order. You can't erase what you built. What I built. Sarah snapped. You destroyed everything. Nancy smiled faintly. I didn't start this HOA, Sarah, you did. Silence. Even the storm outside seemed to stop. I looked at Sarah, confused. What is she talking about? Sarah didn't answer. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Nancy continued. The original charter, the foundation, the rules. You wrote them. You wanted control. I just perfected it. My brain spun. Sarah, tell me she's lying. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. Jake, before you moved here, I was part of the founding committee. But it wasn't supposed to turn into this. Nancy laughed again, harsh, echoing. Oh, but it did. You just didn't have the stomach to lead. The projector went dark. And then, we heard the door unlock. Click. Nancy's voice whispered through one last time. Meeting adjourned. Sarah didn't move. She just sat there, trembling. Jake, she whispered. She's right. This is my fault. I knelt beside her. You were trying to help. Not build a cult. She looked at me, eyes hollow. It doesn't matter what I meant. The HOA still lives, and now it wants revenge. When we stepped outside, the entire neighborhood was dark. Every porch light, off. Every house, quiet. And then, all at once, every light flickered on. Same time. Same second. In the middle of the street, something glowed faintly. A fresh banner stretched between two mailboxes. It read, Welcome back, President Carter. Sarah's wheelchair rolled backward a little. President. I said. Sarah, what does that mean? She didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on something behind me. I turned. And my heart stopped. Nancy stood at the end of the street. Alive. Soaked. Smiling. And in her hand, a folder. Stamped with the same red logo, HOA Council, Division of Neighborhood Integrity. Lightning flashed again, and when I looked back, she was gone. Just like before. But the folder was on the ground now. And written across the front in big, black letters. For Sarah's eyes only. Do you think Nancy is real, or is Sarah's own guilt bringing her back to life? Eyes. Comment your theory, because in part 7, the truth finally comes out. I didn't open the folder right away. Something about it felt wrong. Like it was breathing. Sarah didn't move either. She just stared at it lying there on the road, the red logo glowing faintly under the streetlights. HOA Council, Division of Neighborhood Integrity. I bent down slowly. The paper was dry. But it had been raining. That's when I knew. Nancy hadn't just dropped it. She had left it here, waiting. We went back inside, locked every door, and drew every curtain. The power kept flickering, like the whole neighborhood was on the same dying heartbeat. Rex wouldn't stop growling at the front window. Sarah sat at the dining table. Hands trembling. The folder in front of her. I can't do it, she whispered. Not again. Again? I asked. Sarah, what's in there? She swallowed hard. Something I buried years ago. Literally. I opened the folder before she could stop me. Inside were 3 things. Keycap 1, a stack of old meeting minutes from the HOA's first year. Keycap 2, a photo of a group, 5 people, all smiling in front of the clubhouse. Keycap 3, and a single burned document, labeled Compliance Protocol, Phase 1. The photo froze me. Because there, in the center, was Sarah, standing right beside Nancy. Both wearing the same logo on their jackets. Neighborhood Integrity Council. Sarah, I whispered, you were on the board with her. She nodded slowly. Before it turned into what it is now. We started it as a neighborhood watch. Just safety patrols, small rules. Then Nancy brought in outside funding. That's when things changed. Funding from who? She looked at the folder again. That's what I never found out. But Nancy used to say we had to preserve the order, that every neighborhood needed purity. I thought it was metaphorical. She trailed off. Until the disappearances started. I flipped through the meeting minutes. Every page looked normal, until I reached the last one. The handwriting wasn't Sarah's. It was Nancy's. Members failing to comply have been reassigned. Reassigned? I said. Like, moved? Sarah shook her head. No. That's the word she used instead of removed. I could barely speak. You mean, killed? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Then we heard it. A soft, rhythmic knock on the front door. 3 times. Slow. Sarah froze. Rex barked wildly. I walked to the peephole. No one. Then the knock came again, but from the back door. Jake, don't, she hissed. She plays with sound. She's dead, Sarah. Then explain this, she snapped, pointing at the folder. The papers were moving, turning pages on their own, like invisible hands flipping through history. The photo fell to the floor, and something new was written on the back in faint, red ink. Meeting tonight, attendance mandatory. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One message. Round pushpin the lake. Midnight. Sarah saw it too. She shook her head violently. That's where it started. That's where she'll end it. I stared at her. If we don't go, she'll keep coming. You know that. Sarah's voice broke. Jake, if we go there, only one of us comes back. 11:58 p.m. The rain had stopped. The lake shimmered like black glass. No frogs. No crickets. Just silence. We parked near the old boathouse. Sarah's wheelchair rolled slowly over the gravel. Each crunch sounded like a warning. Then we saw her. Nancy. Standing by the water, her reflection rippling beneath her. Still wearing that same soaked blazer, her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. You came, she said softly. Good. We can finish the vote now. Sarah's voice trembled. You're not real. Nancy smiled. Oh, I'm very real. You made me real when you signed that first charter. You built this order, Sarah. I was just the enforcer. I tried to disband it. Sarah shouted. You turned it into something sick. Nancy took a slow step forward, water dripping from her sleeves. Sick? No. Efficient. You wanted peace. I delivered obedience. The lake began to ripple harder. Something beneath the surface moved, large, slow, circular. Nancy turned to me. You're loyal, Jake. You understand structure. You'd make a good member. I shook my head. You tortured her. You tied her down. Nancy smirked. Correction, I reintroduced discipline. That's what you wanted, deep down. To restore order. Sarah screamed. I never wanted this. Nancy raised her hand. The lake water rose slightly, swirling into a shape, like hands reaching upward. Then reject it, Nancy whispered. Reject it, and end it all. Sarah looked at me, eyes wide, terrified but determined. Jake, she's feeding off guilt. If I confess, she'll lose power. Confess what? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Before the drowning. I approved the motion. I signed the compliance order. It was supposed to be symbolic. But Nancy, she took it literally. She started the removals. She said it was what I wanted. Lightning cracked. The wind roared. Nancy's voice turned guttural. Liar. You begged for control. Sarah screamed back. No. I begged for safety. The water surged up, knocking me backward. For a second, everything went white, rain, light, static, voices overlapping. When I opened my eyes, Sarah's wheelchair was at the edge of the dock. Nancy stood behind her, one hand on the backrest. Sign it again, Sarah, Nancy said. One final compliance. Reinstate the order, and I'll let him live. Sarah looked at me, shaking her head. Don't listen. She needs my name. That's all. Nancy extended a pen, the same silver pen from the old HOA office. Sign, or he drowns. I tried to move, but something was holding me, the lake itself, pulling at my legs. Cold. Heavy. Alive. Sarah took the pen. Her hands trembled. If I sign, you leave him? Nancy smiled. Yes. I'll only take what belongs to me. Sarah hesitated, then did something no one expected. She turned the pen around and stabbed it into her own palm. Blood dripped onto the document. You want my signature? She gasped. Take it. The paper burned instantly, flames of red light. Nancy screamed, the first real scream. The water exploded upward, swallowing her in a vortex of light and smoke. And then, silence. I crawled toward Sarah. She was pale, barely breathing. It's over, I whispered. She smiled faintly. No, Jake, it's just begun. She opened her other hand. Inside, a small metal badge, soaked in blood. The letters etched on it read, President, HOA Council. It never leaves, she whispered. The title passes on. She looked at me, eyes dimming. And now, it's yours. The wind stopped. The rain stopped. Everything stopped. And as the moonlight hit the lake, I saw my reflection ripple. But it wasn't my face staring back. It was Nancy's. Smiling. Who do you think truly controls the HOA now, Jake or Nancy living through him? Smiling face with horns. Drop your theories below, because the final episode will change everything you thought you knew about this story.